Even with the provincial election right on our doorstep, it was a busy week in Hamilton politics. For instance, we saw one of the contenders for the mayor's job, Keanin Loomis, come out with their full suite of social media channels and their website, but they don't have their platform out yet. And as soon as they do, we're going to have Keanin back on the OShow to really dig into that and to see whether or not you think that he's qualified to be the mayor based on what he wants to do for the city. Also this week, we saw the repitch on the repitch on the repitch, I've lost count, from the Commonwealth Games group. Only this time they're not pitching an event, they're pitching something that's more ethereal and may not be fully in Hamilton, but of course, they're still pitching our city council and our tax dollar. We'll get into all of that, plus new research from I-Elect on what the big issue is for voters and what that could mean for the October 24th election. And we're going to talk to Craig Burley on that. You don't want to miss a minute of this OShow. Let's go. Craig, it's great to have you back on the program, and I'm really excited to hear all about what I-Elect has found out in its research with McMaster University about what is sort of driving the voters for this municipal election on October 24th. But first, I want to go to a tweet thread of yours that I was reading about. You watched the pitch about the Commonwealth Games bid and had some really great comments on it. I've lost track of how many times this group has pitched council and how much city staff time and council time has been spent on this. But is it correct? Are they no longer trying to pitch an event, but more of a ethereal kind of thing in space and time? Like, what the hell's going on, honestly?
The Bidco is calling it a movement. There was some scabrous commentary online about what nature of movement that would be. And it's not going to be an event in time. Now, what that means for something that's billed as a 2030 Hamilton Games is hard to say, but what they have said is there won't be a Hamilton focus, that there will be events happening throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe, and the reasons for that are to minimize the cost of constructing facilities, which does, cut against promises that we're hearing from councillors and others about how we're going to have, a new pool and things like that. There's not going to be a pool. There already is a pool. The higher levels of government already built one, and they built it for 2015. So those events will be held in Toronto. Athletics will be held in Toronto, right? We have a soccer stadium here that we built with Future Fund money. That's not going to be used for soccer because there's no soccer at the Commonwealth Games, but maybe field hockey. The purpose of these events from municipal point of view is often that it's a leverage for investment from higher levels of government. This time we're not getting that, and it's been very specifically promised that we're not getting it. The amounts that they're going to spend on actually operating the games, the operating costs, those have increased, but the amounts for capital expenditures, i.e. building stuff, has plummeted through the floor. It's now less than 10% of what it was and less than 5% of the total costs. So it really is difficult to understand what we will be getting. There are no firm plans or proposals within what was presented to council.
Well, how could there be? It's a movement. It's not a thing.
What it seems to be maybe is they're saying, we're going to bring over a period of maybe the whole year of 2030, we'll bring scattered events to Canada. But that's not a sports tourism property like you'd have with an Olympic Games. It's a very different proposition.
So why are they pitching
marketing?
Like, what are they asking for? Like, our money? What do they want?
At the moment, they're firmly saying they're not asking for any money. What they're asking for is a commitment of substantial staff time and other support from the municipal government.
That's our money. We pay the staff. What's the difference? It's still our money.
There is no difference in my view. And ultimately, right, the hope here, I think, is to continue to keep the Commonwealth Games as an institution on life support. These games organizations, both the Canadian Games group and the Commonwealth Games Foundation, they need the money provided by hosts to keep operating. And so there's a quid pro quo here. Get your government to invest and cut us in for the funds. But when there's no longer any capital dollars in play and nothing to build and no infrastructure money, they were very clear there would be no improvements to local infrastructure from this. You begin to wonder, what's the point? The point is to gum up the city for a couple of weeks or potentially all year, we're hearing now, and at our expense, at the taxpayers' expense.
Who benefits out of this scenario?
From the point of, again, it's hard to tell specifics from what's being provided because we're speaking in really general terms. The current Birmingham Games, right, have had to go and raid their city's future fund, or their equivalent of what our future fund was, because they're 50 million pounds or 25 million pounds, they're 40 million Canadian dollars short of the money that the local government was supposed to get from other sources. That's what they're asking us for. They're asking for an unfunded commitment. And they want a letter from the city that says, we'll fund an unfunded commitment for these games. And that's what they're hoping to negotiate over the coming weeks.
There was some significant movement in the mayor's race this week, in the sense that we have seen that Keanin Loomis has now got all of his kind of platforms and things out there, and a little bit of their big messaging, but they don't have their actual details about what they're running about. And as soon as Keanin puts that up there, he's going to come on the OShow and explain it to me, and I'll challenge it, of course. But did you see any of the rollout? Did you get an impression from what kind of campaign they're putting together, or what their chances might be up against at least Bob Bertina?
I've been talking to Keanin throughout, the course of 2022 as he's been getting ready for his run, and I've been speaking with Keanin since. I know that certainly the emphasis is going to be on looking at what the practical aspects of the mayor's role are, right? Especially with, right, being the head of council and having a mayor's office, an institutional place where political activity within the city can be conducted, right? And looking to try and unleash some of this in terms of being a resource for council and council's management of city government. I know that Keanin is really keen on providing more resources to those who run the city to enable them, right, to govern it better. And that's something that I think is interesting. And certainly, I think his role in our local business community, especially the small business community, which I'm a part of myself, has been really well received. And I think from the point of view of looking at that, it is a break from the past, which Bob Bertina certainly, represents a continuity link with the past of this city. And I think there is, it's change versus more of the same.
So very interesting. Okay, last thing I want to talk to you about. Oh, so go ahead. Yeah.
That we as I-Elect have been seeing, right, from the response of people around the city is a real call for leadership. And I think it's going to be at the mayoral level, a leadership election. I'm usually not one much for the choice of mayors. Our mayoral system is very weak, and there isn't really a lot of control that mayors have. They are in many ways the weakest politically of all the people around that table. You might be elected on a citywide basis, but ultimately you've got no base of power and really less control, especially under our municipal bylaws. You've got less control of how council operates for the real work than your council colleagues do.
I just want to stop you there, Craig, because I get it. Technically, the mayor is just one of 16 voices around the table, one of 16 votes, blah, blah, blah. But we all know that when a mayor takes the job seriously, when the mayor responds quickly to issues, they can set the tone, that their bully pulpit is more powerful than any single ward councillor has, that they can respond to crisis, they can set the vision for the future. And if they're a strong mayor and they're popular because they are doing those things publicly and they are engaged and they are leading, then they can whip the votes around the council chamber. We've seen it before. We've seen where strong mayors have been able to really move the city in a certain direction. So I'm not going to lower the expectations and say, well, the mayor can't really do anything anyway. No, a good mayor can make a difference even within our structure. And that's what I'm expecting from these mayors going forward in this election campaign. I expect a mayor who's actually going to do the job and do it seriously and make a difference for our city. These mayors who are running, they better plan to kill it if they get the job.
Trust me, you're not going to raise my expectations, believe me, but that's leadership that you're talking about, and that's what people in this city seem to want.
So tell me, I-Elect found that out because you've got some new research coming out this week. Maybe you can kind of tease a little bit out of it here on the OShow. Are people really looking at leadership as a serious ballot box issue as opposed to a train or area rating or property taxes or whatever else? Is it really leadership? Is that what you're finding? What does it mean?
When we did our preliminary assessment of our constituent survey of the city's electorate, which came out last year, that's what we found. We found that leadership was the area of the greatest dissatisfaction. That there was a substantially dissatisfied voter base, and that what they're looking for is better leadership. More than anything else, more than any material issue, the greatest dissatisfaction was there. Now, I-Elect have taken that, and we have spent a few months working with the McMaster research shop, social scientists who are looking to kind of put this at a greater level of analytical complexity. And we have a report coming out and hopefully released this week that really dives into the nitty-gritty of what people told us, of what they spontaneously told us, their commentary on these issues. And we have sort of a greater geographic sense. The dissatisfaction is citywide, and the area of that greatest dissatisfaction is with our city's leadership and the leadership of those on council specifically. It's mentioned again and again when people talk about the city government. And that has to do with basic things, right? Like affording proper respect to the citizens that come and speak to them. Basic things, right? Like having a coherent plan and having coherent proposals to lead into the challenges that are ahead. And of course, leading out of the challenges of COVID. We spent a long time reacting without a lot of long-term planning. And people are really now feeling the lack of that planning around them. The city is thrashing about for a method for how to help with the biggest challenges that are faced, right? And certainly housing ranks high among those. We've seen again and again the housing commentary, both in things that people say to us subsequent to the survey, but also there within the survey. People are concerned about their future in this city and their ability to afford to live here. It seems like an incredibly basic challenge that our city has throughout the pandemic completely failed to deal with. There's a lot of trumpeting about building permits and not a lot of trumpeting of its performance in housing our neediest people. I think that's what my view is. That's what's got to change. And that's what I want to see proposals from people who are running, that they understand the nature of the challenge and that they're willing to work together with city government and with other levels of government to try and meet those challenges. Because we have a very basic problem of too many people who can't afford Hamilton rents anymore. And if that doesn't get ameliorated, we're looking at a human disaster.
Point well taken. And so it sounds to me that with the I-Elect survey, housing is a huge concern, but people put it at the feet of leadership. Thank you for being one of the voices that people trust on the issues they care about.